Hi, and welcome to the Risk and Resilience Insight interviews. I'm Grant Kennedy, and today we have Mark Hamill from Arctic Global. Welcome, Mark. How are you?
Yeah, very good, very good. Thanks for having me, Grant.
So, a vast amount of experience and knowledge across many sectors, but we'll find that out in a minute. Would you mind just giving us a little bit of an insight into your background, where you've come from, and where you are today, and the types of work that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm from Belfast, Northern Ireland. Moved to Dubai when I was 22. I'd spent 10 years in the UAE, set up a couple of businesses, and my current company, Arctic Global, specializes very much in large-scale business events, particularly in customer centricity, but also how we can help organizations improve on their transformation to become more customer-centric, whether that be through consultancy, training, communication strategy, and really building that community of business leaders as well around the topic of customer centricity. So operating Middle East, Europe and North America primarily, but we have clients all over the world.
Great. Well, I think customer centricity will build out and try to understand what that means, how it means. I mean, certainly from my point of view, customer centric risk is extremely important. Customer harm is talked about in operational resilience. Thinking about stakeholders, all these elements around that is a key part of customer risk to me, and it'd be interesting to see your view and how you work with organisations, run your overall awards. Would be great. But before we do that, just a couple of questions to get an insight into yourself that we ask with everybody is, what's the riskiest thing that you've ever done, and what makes you resilient?
Riskiest thing I've ever done, it's probably, I've done it twice somehow, and that was setting up my first business. I sold my car to set up my first business, so invested the money from that to the running costs of the business, and then for my second business it was selling my apartment and investing, well, for this one for Arctic Global. So those are probably the two most risky things. And resilience wise, what makes me resilient? I think I've got pretty good stickability in terms of knowing that I have to keep persisting with something that might seem very challenging at times, and I think any entrepreneur needs to have that stickability to be successful. But yeah, that I would just say the experience of knowing that you have to keep going, even when times are really tough, or knowing the cliche that tomorrow can always be better than today. If you're having a tough day, these sorts of things I think help make you resilient. And just having you're an entrepreneur yourself, Grant, so you know how it is. It's like being able to get up after disappointments, I think, and growing from those.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very similar in very many ways. And to be able to set up and run a business, you've got to have these hurdles and be able to know what you want to do, set your objectives, just like organizations have to do with risk management. Where is it you're going? What's your vision? What's your direction? And doing everything you can to allow that to happen. And you will have knockbacks. You'll have the disappointing days. Contracts won't come in, but seeing that progression is the exciting bit. And I think obviously you're a certain level of risk taking, risk tolerance, and you've put everything out to make sure that happens, and have ended up in a great place that you are now. So yeah, really interesting. I think that gives us a lead into actually trying to understand what you do now, and how that it can be applied to lots of different organisations. So customer centricity is the word that you use. Maybe you could just expand on that a bit more, and maybe give us some of the examples of some case studies or various different clients that you work with, and the awards as well would be interesting.
Yeah, I suppose the awards might be a good place to start. So I would say the awards are a magnet of really good stories from around the world. So any of the programs that we run, companies submit not just about themselves in general as a company wide, it's very much what they've been working on throughout the year in certain categories, and really trying to establish the narrative of how they're trying to improve their business to become more customer centric. But becoming customer centric, particularly for legacy businesses, is not easy. And to really steer a massive ship, to make it like a big bank or a big telco, or even government departments, to try and make them customer centric takes years and years. Really clear vision, really strong leadership, and knowing where to focus your efforts as well in order to become customer centric. The reason why we're in this sort of era of the last sort of 15, 20 years of tech companies coming in and being much more successful is because they start with a problem, they're able to fix that problem or solve that for the consumer, and able to grow that. And that's all about customer centricity. Like Amazon's always the example. They are much more customer centric than 99.9% of companies out there. And it's difficult for really well established companies that are making money they've been making money over X number of years to really shift or see the need to shift. So you've seen many examples of extremely well established companies they're not even existing anymore. Like Kodak is, it still exists, but shadow of its former self. Like so a Blockbuster, or where I come from, it was called Extravision, believe it or not. But these sorts of ones, and they just weren't listening to their customers. They didn't have the peripheral vision to see what was, or the customer insight, foresight, to see what was really going on in the market, or how their customers' needs will change, and they became irrelevant essentially.
And what is the starting point then? To you mentioned insight and foresight. So foresight is a key part of organisational resilience, and you've run the very large organisational resilience awards as well. But it's about thinking about beyond your organisation, about thinking about where you're going to go. But the insight, do you mean the insight into the stakeholders themselves, actually the customers? Is it trying to understand what they need and what they want? Because often when we ask that question to a lot of banks, the finance sector, or various different organisations that come in the risk and resilience course, is that, have you actually engaged with your customers? Have you actually understood what they want? Because that's what more and more of the regulations and regulators are expecting you to do as well, to reduce harm to those customers, whatever service that you're delivering. So how do some of your clients go about doing that to understand their customers? Is it a simple matter of talking, engaging? What's the sort of tools and techniques and ways that they would do that proactively?
Yeah, so one of the ways we would do that is through a thing called the Market Responsiveness Index. That's with one of our partners. So they have this great set of tools which can really establish where a company is on a range of disciplines, and really trying to establish what the main areas for concern or opportunities for growth are. Customer insight in the traditional sense is just really trying to understand how your customers are what their experience is in dealing with you as a company. And then the foresight is more about what do you believe your customers are going to be wanting in the future, and building products around that. And then, of course, you need to understand what's going on with your competitors. So insight on your competitors, and then who are your competitors of the future. Example would be, if you were to, the workshop that I went to a few years ago, they put up, it was an internal workshop within one of the big banks in America, and they put their brand in the middle and said, plot around this, who are your competitors? Every single bank employee, I think there were 35 in the room, they said all the other big banks they could think of. And then they said, yes, but no. It's actually, let's go deeper, let's go into each one of those products. And then they were able to find 50 plus fintech brands, special products that compete with every single one of their products. So they were able to establish there and then that actually competition doesn't have to be like for like. It can come from anywhere really. And if you're not going to be relevant, then you're going to be out of business pretty much.
And that's good risk management. It's about understanding the stakeholders, the customers in this case, that we're focusing on, but understanding what your core products and services are. That's a key part of resilience, of continuity management, all these different international standards. What is it you do? And then trying to understand where that competition could be, that who could be delivering these products and services in a more efficient, more dynamic, more engaging way that's better for the customer in mind. And I think that's important in all sorts of different aspects for risk and resilience. The other area I wanted to kind of ask as well was you're focusing in on the customers, which is extremely important, getting an understanding of who they are, needs and expectations, and customer profiles, but also asking your staff as well. You mentioned you're part of these workshops, is asking your staff and getting insight. And we've recently been doing some work with a large airport group alongside yourself. And it's amazing the insight you get when you ask them these types of questions about, is your organization customer centric, and giving them the key questions and tools to be able to do that. And actually then looking to think, do your staff think that? Do they not think that? And actually, that's a great source of risk information. So
Absolutely.
any examples of how that's worked really well with actually getting an insight from the staff through an organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes back to that sort of metrics that we would look at, and that is, as you said, asking from the employee's perspective what they think, and even just changing that mindset. When's the last time you ever got asked, how do you think your company is in terms of how it treats its customers? And I think that alone is a great exercise to do.
So if you could give us a little bit more examples, perhaps, of when you've had the insights from staff, you've gained the information, what's the outcomes from that? How's that worked?
Yeah, well, I think just the very nature of a company asking its other leaders or anyone in the company really about how customer centric they think their own company is refreshing. It changes their mindset as well to think, wow, yeah, this is an opportunity to be honest, even, because usually when you think of customer feedback, you think of the customers themselves, never mind the internal customers. But yeah, we had a big project over the last 18 months or so, and that was a big company in Europe, and we were able to establish quite quickly that the issues lay within, and what I mean by that's cross-functional collaboration. That was their biggest roadblock to becoming more customer-centric. And once that was established, then they were able to put in the corrective actions in place. They put together special teams to work on that, and it was really amazing to hear a few months down the line that instead of these problems, let's say, that were coming up, and they were directed usually to one team, what happened was in the next few months after the project with us had finished, they were coming with them and telling them what they had done. So they shifted from like a problem, like highlighting a problem, to actually just dealing with it, coming up with a solution with different team members from other groups within the company. So that was great, but also the impact that had on internal and how customer centric they thought when we remeasured, it went up. And then even better down the line, I think the average percentage that the customer satisfaction went up was about 15%. So you have to change within in order to improve with your customers as well. So knowing where you stand to begin with and where the real challenges are or the main opportunities for improvement is probably the best place to begin.
Great, and there's such an overlap there with the way that the operational resilience, organizational resilience standards are evolving to understand the flow of the important business services all the way through the organization, but also making sure that those silos, the dependencies, the cross-fertilization of that ecosystem is working together, but not just with the output of good customer service. It's got to go all the way through the organization, almost from inputs to outputs as well. So that's the key bit that you try and understand to make sure that that comes out. Ultimately, that results in a better process through the whole organization then, yeah?
Absolutely, yeah. And like, I'll give you another example. There was a workshop we did in Dubai maybe 5-6 years ago, and it was, let's say, middle management up. We're coming on these customer experience masterclasses, and one of the ladies that was there, we went in the first morning, just sat there like sort of arms crossed, and we're like, are you okay? She said, well, I shouldn't really be here. And we were like, why not? So I'm senior in compliance. Like, why should I be at a customer experience masterclass? And then we were like, well, who annoys customers more than compliance in terms of you're the ones that say no to customers and existing customers, potential customers, and the way that you treat your employees, the other employees, your colleagues, with the information and why things are being rejected or reasons for asking for more information, that's paramount to customer experience. Arguably one of the most important people. Still wasn't convinced, but at the end of the 2 days, she was like, I totally get what you mean. These internal relations, let's say, not just with compliance, but with IT, with finance, procurement, whoever it is. It's paramount to, and it does affect the end customer.
And it's an interesting point you raise. And obviously, I've worked with hundreds of risk, compliance, assurance type senior roles, through the various institutes that I'm a mentor and diploma programs, and I've had a lot of engagement over many years, and that is one of the areas that we discuss quite a lot when we're mentoring, supporting the development, because a lot of the time these types of roles are looked on negatively. They're looked on the type of role of the rules stopping things happening, stopping bad things happening, which is extremely important in risk management. But actually, there's a flip side to enterprise risk management. It's about allowing things to happen, allowing the organisation to take risks within, the certain appetite of the organisation, within legal controls and parameters. But it's about changing the way that they approach things to instead of saying no, to saying yes, we can do it this way. And I think that's what starts to engage these types of roles much more.
Absolutely.
Team with the board, because when boards set direction and objectives, they're not thinking about the things they can't do, it's what we can do. So when the risk information, the risk language is coming through, how can that just resonate a little bit more? And I think that's interesting that you've managed to develop that through a customer-centric viewpoint as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, like that had an impact on how they were measuring their customer satisfaction as well. So what they were doing as an organization, which was incorrect, was they were only surveying those who got their loan, who got their mortgage. So they had huge satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
But in reality, it wasn't the case, because there's a lot of customers they were turning away. So if the compliance team or customer experience team, the whole group, were then able to say, well, actually, we weren't able to give them what they wanted this time, but what else can we use, as you said, like the opportunities that come from then not taking risks or a certain level of risk, then there were a lot more opportunities for them in that sense. So they started to look at things differently as a whole.
Good. So encouraging, maximising opportunities, not just protecting value, but adding value as well. And that's a key part of the language of when you really understand risk management. How can you add and protect value to be able to withstand the worst, to be able to respond and move forward quickly? So there's so many integrations and overlaps with the work that you're doing. So really exciting. Can you give me, as we move on to your own organisation, when you're running these workshops and large scale events that you run, the awards particularly, what's the sort of risk that you have to think about yourself? How do you make sure that you look after your customers that are involved in these awards? What's the sort of things that you do proactively that makes them a success?
Yeah, I think that the nature of what we do as a business is quite different from what I was doing with my first business, which was more, let's say, in-person large conferences, and there wasn't much we would offer in terms of value throughout the year. Whereas what we have with these events is it's very much building a community. The awards are something that is the big celebration towards the end of the year, annual events, let's say. And it's about adding value perpetually. So we have lots of content throughout. So we're always engaging and adding value. We've got lots of webinars, we have workshops, we have specialists we can put people in touch with. So we're never far away from our customer experience community or business leaders community, which I think is something that really helps us in terms of continuity for our events. You've seen the types of judges that we have at our events as well. Having such a stellar lineup of judges and so many, like usually 70 or 80 for each program, that's a huge platform for us to begin with, which de-risks it somewhat, but we still have to go out to the market and always trying to find new customers, but keeping our existing customers happy and always adding value is our core business. I'd say that's the thing we would focus on day to day. And anything comes through marketing or sales outreach as we grow the business, that's great. But if we keep everyone happy and keep adding value, then that's what we need to do. Really focus on that.
And do you have any key tips for good communication with your customers? What's the sort of secret that you have? Is it just a personal touch? Is it phone calls? Is it just constant flow of information communication? What's the key things that work for you and for your customers?
We are quite strong when it comes to our strategy, so we really try not to. We also try not to deliberately annoy people, so we're not that not constantly knocking on the door of mass emails. We're not putting out too much content. We always try and stay relevant and have something to talk about, which is one thing I would say, that, you know, not just saying things for the sake of saying things. That would be one thing. But well, you've dealt with us, Grant, for a while now. Like, we really try and be reliable in our communications. We try and get back to people as quickly as we possibly can. And we always have a person that they can speak to. You know, that just being really quick and reliable. Reliability is the foundation of trust, and if you take reliability out of it, then yeah, you're not really going to be much of a business, really. I think if you're not responding to people with a person and you're a small business of less than 10 people, then what are you going to be like if you grew? I think it's a culture you have to embed, and yeah, so just being really reliable and quick with, if anyone has any questions or wants any information or wants to jump on a call, we're exceptionally fast with that, I would say.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for the insight. And one of the things you mentioned at the end is culture, and culture is a key element of risk management. Well, and that's another topic for another day. So thank you again so much, Mark. It's been brilliant to hear from you, and look forward to being involved in the future. So thanks for your time.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Grant. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Right, let me just close it down.
Hope that was all right.
I think it was good.
Yeah.